American President Donald Trump, buoyed by success in Venezuela, suddenly announced he is ready to send United States Special Forces or military to Ukraine to quickly end the war. And suddenly, Vladimir Putin mysteriously disappeared from the public eye, and the entire Kremlin managed to utter only words of condemnation. After Donald Trump captured Venezuela's president and announced the United States would now govern the country. Moreover, having tasted blood, Trump stated that he was dissatisfied with his Russian counterpart, Vladimir Putin, who continues the war against Ukraine. And he immediately added that he is not afraid of the Russian dictator, just as he wasn't afraid of Nicolas Maduro, who is now in an American prison. The rapid United States operation in Venezuela, resulting in the president's arrest, drew admiration and praise from Putin's Z military correspondents. Despite the fact that Russia and Venezuela are actually bound by a strategic partnership agreement, which also includes military technical cooperation. And now in Moscow, people are seriously talking about the fact that at this rate Trump might even capture Putin if he doesn't agree to a proper deal on Ukraine. At the same time, the fall of Nicolas Maduro's regime has left the fate of billions of dollars in investments and loans that Venezuela received from Russia hanging in the air. And that's no small amount. By modest estimates, Putin invested about $20 billion in Maduro's regime. But that's not all. It turned out that Maduro was being guarded by former Wagner private military company structures, but the fighters, messed up and couldn't protect Maduro. My name is Aleksey Pichi. Let's discuss this topic together, but before we start, I ask you to subscribe to this channel, give it a like and leave any comment under this episode. This really helps promote the content on YouTube and I would be grateful to you for that. Also subscribe to my Telegram channel Pichi News, the link to it is in the description of this video. I'll begin this episode with some interesting, less obvious information. Many are asking how Maduro and his wife were pulled from bed without security having time to respond. And where were the intelligence services of Russia, China and Iran to warn Nicolas Maduro about the upcoming operation? Let's start with the security. It's interesting that Wagner private military company forces helped provide Nicolas Maduro's personal security. Russian mercenaries first appeared in Venezuela in 2019. In the past 2 years, there has been a presence of Russian instructors and fighters who helped suppress protests and guard strategic sites. From October to December 2025, Il-76 planes arrived in Caracas. Private military company Wagner handled logistics. It was believed that they brought about 200 militants who were supposed to personally guard Maduro. In addition, Maduro's security system had several layers. There were 3. The first is the Casa Militar, which is the main unit of the Presidential Guard. The second is the Cuban Special Services, J2. It is specifically Cuban specialists who provide counterintelligence inside the presidential palace. And the third level is the Colectivos, which are paramilitary pro-government groups that provided security for the outer perimeter in residential neighborhoods around government facilities. But despite all these security perimeters, the Americans easily entered Maduro's palace, which is also located on a military base, and no one managed to react in time. And where are the Russians, with whom Maduro actually has a strategic alliance? And it is already known that the Russian militants who were in Caracas urgently evacuated to the building of the Russian Federation embassy, and they are still hiding there. Beijing mentioned condemnation, but isn't directly accusing the United States. Iran called the actions of the United States state terrorism. But Tehran isn't really concerned about Maduro right now. They have their own protests going on. The only thing that Moscow and Beijing did was call a meeting of the United Nations Security Council. And now Trump is adding fuel to the fire. Trump once again stated that he is dissatisfied with Russia, with the Russian dictator Vladimir Putin, who continues the war against Ukraine. And he added that he is not afraid of some Putin, just like he wasn't afraid of some Maduro. According to Trump, he wants to stop the killings and save people's lives, while every month 27,000 to 30,000 soldiers die on both the Kyiv and Moscow sides. Quote, I thought that one of the easiest conflicts to resolve would be the war between Russia and Ukraine, but that's not the case, and both sides have done enough bad things. This war of former United States President Joe Biden is not mine, but I want to stop it and save lives. This war has become a bloodbath, and we have to stop all of this. Then came the most interesting part, which only fueled the situation. Donald Trump stated that the war in Ukraine would not have lasted so long if the United States had used its intelligence agencies and armed forces. Like in the case of the operation to capture Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro on the night of January 3rd, here's another quote from Trump. "That night I was watching the operation in Venezuela. It was so precise, delightful, simply incredible. If our people like General Dan Kane had participated in the war in Ukraine, that war would not have lasted so long. I assure you, I did not discuss the capture of Maduro with Putin, and I will not." In the Kremlin, such statements made them freeze. Russian Z military correspondents suddenly praised the swift United States action against Venezuela. Despite Russia's agreement to defend Maduro's regime, now Russian military correspondents are writing, quote, The attack, which lasted only 30 minutes and included a series of airstrikes and CIA operations to capture and extract Maduro, is considered a model special military operation. Arrived, completed the job and left. The United States cleared a corridor for their helicopters with special forces to fly through, destroying several targets in the country along the way, and after capturing Maduro, they immediately left. But they could kidnap Putin the same way. And here it's worth remembering how in 2022, the Russian army also tried to capture Kiev's Hostomel airfield using an airborne assault, and then in a similar way took the Antonivsky Bridge in Kherson to cross the Dnipro, but later the Russians had to retreat back across the same bridge. Beyond their reputation, which Russians already lack, Russia is also losing billions of dollars Putin invested in Maduro's regime. According to Reuters estimates, from 2006 to 2017 alone, the Kremlin allocated a total of $17 billion to the Venezuelan government, as well as to the country's state oil company Petróleos de Venezuela, Sociedad Anónima. The first funds, more than $2 billion, were received by Maduro's predecessor, Hugo Chavez, who in 2009 signed a contract to purchase Russian weapons, T-72 tanks and S-300 air defense systems, which on the night when the Americans captured Maduro, for some reason did not help the regime. 8 years later, Venezuela already owed Moscow $3.5 billion, which it could not repay due to the economic crisis and sanctions. In 2017, Vladimir Putin and Maduro agreed to delay loan payments for 10 years with the principal due between 2024 and 2027. Maduro is not going to repay any debts, moreover. At the end of the 2010s, Rosneft became a major creditor to Maduro, in exchange receiving shares in major Venezuelan oil production projects. The Maduro government used Russian money to avoid default, repaying its debt to the Kremlin with oil, which Rosneft resold on the global market. In other words, essentially, Russia was extracting oil from Venezuela and selling it under its own brand. Now, the fate of Venezuela's oil fields is in the hands of Donald Trump's administration, and it's clear that the Russians won't get anything back. But the most humiliating thing for the Kremlin here is Trump's statement that he's confident there won't be any problems with Russia because of the operation in Venezuela. Trump says he has never discussed Maduro's fate with Putin and doesn't plan to. But Marco Rubio put it more bluntly: if the Russians are unhappy about something, well, they can cry about it, that's all they can do. And in this whole story, Moscow has only managed to express condemnation and concern. And the Russian Ministry of Foreign Affairs demanded the release of Maduro and his wife, Cecilia Flores, who, by the way, are facing several life sentences in the United States. But tell me, who in Donald Trump's circle is going to listen to some Russians making demands? That's how Russians got involved in the war in Ukraine, but they're losing influence all over the world. Do you think I'm exaggerating? Let's just go with what comes to mind quickly. Central Asia has gone to China, and the Middle East has gone to the Americans. Two of Putin's key allies, Maduro in Venezuela and Bashar Assad in Syria, have been defeated, Iran is in a state of protest, and Trump is threatening new strikes against the Ayatollah regime. Cuba remains, but now Trump has set his sights on it as well, and is openly stating that after Venezuela, Cuba is next. So it turns out that Asia, the Middle East, the Western Hemisphere, and Europe, all those places where Russia once had influence, it no longer does. Instead, it is bogged down in a war against Ukraine. That's your great geostrategist, Vladimir Vladimirovich Kudlo. I'll leave it at that. Share your opinions and conclusions in the comments below this episode, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell, and don't forget to like friends. If you want to support the work of this YouTube channel, you can do so with any donation using the links and details provided. In the description of this video it says, support the Aleksey Pichi channel. Choose any format that's convenient for you. I will be grateful for any support from you. That's all for now. Take care of yourselves. Goodbye everyone.